Good morning. Today is Thursday, October 6th, 2011. My name is AJ Goldsby. I'm a life master from Pensacola, Florida. And I'm offering you or bringing you my very first video ever. And I'm starting with the very famous chess game, Garry Kasparov-Topalov from Wijk aan Zee 1999. Many masters, not just myself, consider this to be the greatest game ever played. And I will be taking to my webpage. At the end of this game, I'll give you the URL for that web page. But anyway, the game starts off e4, d6, d4, knight f6, 3 knight c3, g6. This is just a perk/modern defense. Black, rather than playing a double king pawn or double queen pawn opening, which is probably a more solid way of playing the opening and also possibly more drawish, Black's basically fianchettoing his king bishop and basically trying to fight for the center and play a very active type of game. Usually White is allowed to build up a large pawn center, and Black basically tries to break that down or tear it down or gain counterplay against it. White plays bishop e3. This is, a modern move here. The bishop sits on e3, and basically the idea is, it controls both sides of the board. It's also a very flexible move. Black continues with bishop g7. What I would have probably done here is played knight g4 to harass the king bishop. That's in a completely different system. White plays queen d2. Black plays c6. This is a relatively new move for opening theory. Used to be Black in the perk defense would castle. He play his knight to c6 or d7 and go for the pawn breaks e5 or c5 to basically contest the center. c6 is a totally different idea. Basically, Black develops his pawns to these squares. He's going for a b5 to gain space on the queen side. Also possibly discourage White from castling on the queen side. And basically, he tries to use the center to keep his pieces at bay and do these different things, and it's a much different type of game than the old classical lines and many of the previous lines. And if you want to see a game I've annotated in this line, in a perk defense, look up Bobby Fischer versus Pal Binko for one of their famous games, and I have a web page on that game. You should be able to find it with Google. But anyway, Black plays c6 here. White plays f3. This is a very solid move. You see this a lot in both the Yugoslav and also the Samish defense. Basically, the idea of this pawn is that it anchors e4 and also prevents Black's pieces from coming to the g4 square, either a knight or a bishop, especially that knight forcing White to move his king bishop. Black continues with his plan of queenside expansion, playing b5. White simply plays knight ge2 here, and he's continuing his development. Black plays knight bd7. White plays bishop h6. You could just about give that move an exclam. I like that move. The idea is basically to exchange off Black's dark square defender, and now if Black were to castle kingside, White would have a very strong attack. Black, of course, exchanges the bishops simply because he does not wish to lose time here. Black plays bishop b7, a fianchetto there. White plays a3. This is a very good move. Basically, the idea of this move is to stop to stop Black from pushing his b-pawn and kicking White's knight on its natural c3 square. Black plays e5. Of course, here Black is just trying to contest the center. He's trying to get his fair share of the center. He's trying to fight for the center. And, of course, the center is the most important part of the chessboard. And, of course, the four basic principles are to control the center, develop your pieces as quickly as possible, protect the king and castle early, and to maintain the material balance. Maintaining that material balance, another way of saying that, is really Nimzovich's concept of square control. In other words, every square must be fought for, in a very concerted fashion. In other words, Black here is contesting, say, e5, and also while contesting e5, he's challenging his White's big pawn duo here in the center, and also trying to challenge, White d4 and break down White's center in the middle of the board. White castles queenside. It's pretty obvious that White has a little bit of initiative. Black plays queen e7. This is a good move, and also a waiting move. Of course, he'd like to castle kingside in some lines, but this is impossible with the queen on h6 to castle kingside. Basically, the king would have to travel through check, and that's illegal and not allowed by the laws of chess. White plays king b1. White's last move was to just slide his king over to b1. I have done this myself many times in, say, the White side of many variations when I've castled queenside of an open Sicilian. And the idea is basically that the king is a little bit safer. It's also can be considered a high-class waiting move. The idea is basically saying, you know what, I'm just going to make a good move, improve my position a little bit, and hope that my opponent tips his hand. Black simply here, he's playing a6. Now what this a6 move does is it anchors black's queen side, and this is in case white plays a later b5, then black doesn't have to worry about his b5 square hanging. White continues knight c1. This knight's traveling over to the queen side where it can hit maybe b3, either d3 or b3, and on b3 it'll hit both c5 and a5, and of course on a5 it can harass black's light squared bishop on b7. Black castles, white plays knight b3. Black plays e takes d4. White captures with the rook. This is a very good move. Most people would capture with the knight there. That's basically the first instinct. But Kasparov understands that it's more important to pressure the dark squares and also possibly to double or triple on the d file and harass black's backward pawn. Black plays c5, kicking the rook back. The rook goes back to its home square because it's the only good square. He needs, all the other squares available for his pieces. Black plays knight b6. He's preparing to get the d5 pawn break in. That's a very good move. And I did want to remark here that my annotations are based primarily, but not solely, on Soltis's annotations of this game in his very excellent book, The 100 Best Chess Games Ever Played. Here white plays g3. This is a very good move. Basically, it gives the queen f4 protection in some lines, but the most important thing is now that the white queen bishop can travel to the edge of the board and get on this h3 c8 diagonal. Black plays king b8. He's just kicking before he's running. As predicted, white's knight goes to a5. Black plays his bishop to a8. White plays bishop to h3. And black now plays d5. This is a very good move. It's black is breaking in the center. He's got to get his fair share of the center. He's got to contest white's center. And basically, even though it opens up his king slightly, this is still the correct move for black. White plays queen f4 check. Black gets his king to a7 there. He's basically just running away. And white plays rhe1. This is a very fine move. And here Larry Christensen gives a very long dissertation, or he talks about this position in depth in his book, Storming the Fortresses, Storming the Royal Fortress. And it's a book by Larry Christensen, and it's an excellent book, and I highly recommend it. He looks at this position in some detail. And if you like a kind of book where a master thinks out loud and also looks at positions in great detail, I highly recommend Larry Christensen's book on storming the Royal Fortress. Black plays d5, d4. The idea of this move is, of course, just to kick the white's knight. Now you might be asking yourself, what does Kasparov do here? It looks like he has to retreat his knight. If he goes to d5, it looks like he's just losing a pawn. But that's exactly what he does here. He plays knight d5. That's an extremely brilliant move, very well prepared. It's very in-depth. And, of course, computers have gotten much better today, but when I first started analyzing this game some years ago, the computers weren't nearly as strong as they are today, and they wouldn't find a move like this. Of course, today the computers find these moves. The hardware and software has gotten just so much better, and they find these things so much more quickly. But however, when I first started analyzing this game with the help of the computers, chess programs and chess engines were more or less toys or assists. They really weren't a substitute for analysis, or they weren't dependable as they are today. They certainly weren't as accurate or as powerful as they are today. But anyway, today, the computers do find that move rather quickly. But years ago, when I first analyzed this game with a computer, a lot of these moves were almost impossible for the computer to find. Anyway, black takes on d5, white takes on d5. Now the black's queen is attacked, so he slides it over to d6. And here you might be asking yourself, what in the world was white thinking? His pawn is attacked 4 times here by the queen, the rook, the knight, and the bishop on a8. And it looks like white's just losing a pawn, but Gary has everything planned here. And of course, his next move is a real thunderbolt and a real shocker. He plays rook takes d4. And at this point, Topalov had a lot of choices to make. He opted for taking the rook, which may not have been best. And actually, I'm very glad that he did, because if he hadn't have taken the rook, then maybe the world would have been denied a great brilliancy. But here, he went ahead and took the rook. And basically, what he's saying with this move is that, hey, I'm going to take all the material I can get, and if you don't win the game, if you don't checkmate me, then I'm going to win the game. But anyway, rook takes d4, pawn takes, white takes there, check. Now that's a very brilliant move. You can't take the rook, because well, here, I'll very quickly show you this line. He has to go king b6. That's forced. But let's say for a minute that he doesn't go king b6, that he takes the rook on e7. Then we get into this line here, check, which is all forced, king b8, queen b6 check there. He's can't interpose or doesn't want to interpose with his queen, because to do so would be to lose the queen. And now he plays bishop b7, knight c6 check. The only legal square for the king now is to go in the corner, and then queen a7 mate. So that we can see that the variation that starts with queen takes e7 ends in a total disaster, a fiasco for black, ending with checkmate on that move there. So black's king b6 was pretty much forced at this point. White plays queen takes d4 check, and black takes on a5. And basically now, you know, he's going to be down a tremendous amount of material, a rook and a knight. But unless he checkmates the enemy king or finds a way to win the material black, then you would think that black is just, you know, he's winning because of his preponderance of extra material. So basically, you know, the proof will be in the pudding. In other words, can white mobilize all of his forces and concentrate enough firepower on the king on the edge of the board and try to win this game, you know, before black has a chance to consolidate or bring up the reserves and get all of his pieces into play. And it doesn't take black but just a few moves, you know, to get his pieces into play. What I might be trying to do if I were black was maybe try to bring my rook up and over and block this diagonal and bring the king back to safety. But of course, Kasparov is not going to give him time for that. And now I can see I'm running short of time, so basically I plan to do this video in two parts. I'll pick it up with white's 27th move. Very quickly, though, before I conclude, I want to thank you for watching this video. And also, I want to take you very quickly to my webpage. And here, if you look at this, is www.ajschess.com. If you click on that top link there, this takes you to one of my main pages. This is my old GeoCity site. But GeoCity's closed a few years back, so I've moved everything here to this domain. And if you simply scroll down the page here, you find this box. It talks about my 10 best. You simply click on that. That brings you to my best games page, and then very simply there's the link for Kasparov versus Topalov, and this is my analysis here. And if you look up here at the top, I'll highlight that for a second. But anyway, I'll do that again. That's www.ajschess.com/LifeMasterAJ/Kasp-Topa TOPA1.html. That's the URL for my webpage on this game, and I've analyzed this webpage very, very carefully. There's also a link for a replay. I have my own replay page there. It's slightly annotated, and you can actually play through the game. Of course, you can find this game on the Chess Games website, www.chessgames.com. There's a tremendous amount of commentary there. I've also posted some of the commentary there and discovered and looked at new moves. My handle on the Chess Games website is LifeMasterAJ. But anyway, I would like to thank you for watching this video. I'm going to conclude the video here. Again, I'll be picking this up with part 2. This was part 1, and I will conclude my analysis of Kasparov-Topalov, Wijk aan Zee 1999 with part 2. Thank you.